Welcome back to Dear Rochester, Retire Well. Here's your host, certified financial planner and CEO of 6 Point Financial Partners, Dave Pulcini.
You haven't stopped working out, have you?
Have I stopped working out?
Yes.
I've tried to keep working out. Folks, we're back with Dave Pearlman.
Dave Pulcini, so nice to see you and have us in residence today. Always fun.
So how long have I known you?
I think we're going on a decade plus across a lot of different personal and professional interactions over the years.
So I am seeing you all over social media right now. What are you doing?
You know, I've had all kinds of questions asked. Sometimes it's something simple like, hey, are you looking for a new job? The answer is no, in case anybody's wondering.
No one wanted to hire you anyway, but go ahead.
Probably no one wanted to hire me. But, you know, we've actually been going through a social branding exercise, really focusing on kind of some of my life experiences, expertise, and background. The end result of that will probably be a book coming out here in the May-June timeframe, believe it or not.
Really?
So, yeah,
Have you started it?
We have chapters outlined, probably top 6 or 7 vignettes that we'll be working through that you can draw inferences from both in your life as well as in business.
What made you want to write a book?
You know, there's a lot of different answers for that. Some of it, I get bored pretty quick, oftentimes with, once you get good at something, right, it takes up less of your headspace and you need time to go do other things. And so I've taken up a few other activities, but I really wanted to get down some of the experiences that I've gained from, being in technology for over 30 years and traveling the world. You know, sometimes it's luck. I don't know how we wound up here. I have a good idea, but sometimes it's just taking those opportunities as they come along. And this was another one of those opportunities where I think the next thing in parallel to some of the stuff that I do anyways in my job is get professional at my own branding, my own image, kind of how am I interacting with the rest of the business world and, both on a personal and professional basis. It's been an amazing feedback loop for me as well.
So technology for 30 years, you're still in technology.
I am.
Does your current, I want to go back to how you got to where you are now, but first I have to ask this because I get a lot of questions on this too. Does your current employer care or even know that you are doing all of this other stuff?
That's a great question. I wonder what Adobe will say. No, my boss knows exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. A lot of your personal and public persona sometimes get blended, very much so. And so I think folks that are leaders, that are leading people, leading job functions, oftentimes there's not a whole lot of difference between what they do professionally and personally. So would I be doing anything different today if I was speaking in front of an audience or speaking to a customer? Probably not, right? I'm selling the brand of the company that I'm working for. I'm selling my own personal brand. And then the intellectual property that we've all developed as business leaders over the last 30 years. So yeah, everybody by and large knows, and I'm sharing it with a lot of different folks. In fact, I have some great stories maybe we'll get to later in terms of just impact that it's had on some other people that's been more meaningful in some ways than my full daytime job.
We'll definitely get to that. The reason I was asking is because I do get a lot of folks that say, hey, I have a full-time job. I don't know if I can start marketing myself or this personal brand thing, or I want to write a book, but I can't get away with it. So folks, it is possible. But back up 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Was it really 30 years?
Are
you that old?
It's hard to believe how old I am. Not quite as old as you, David, but I'm trying, and I'm still working out every once in a while.
There you go.
I'm staying fairly active. But thank you, David, for being a leader in the physical workout space and the quad offs that we used to have.
Oh, the quad offs. Yeah. The quad father. So 30 years ago,
yep.
Where were you?
30 years ago, I was in a job that I had gone into business with a number of other people, had an equity stake in the business, didn't fully vet some of the people that I was doing business with. Learned a real valuable lesson when you have a mortgage and you have I think we had our first child on the way, and people weren't necessarily on the up and up. I thought that I was going to be fairly financially fluid, pre 30 years old, and it turns out not so much. Wow. So I had some real life lessons real quickly, and some of those were, who are you doing business with? Why are you doing business with them? And how much control do you have or not have? And the answer to all those things was it was just a poor situation to begin with. If the stock market had done some other things, we had a buyout offer. It probably all would have worked out. But, there were people on no-show jobs and getting paid, all kinds of things. And so I then had the realization that either I'm going to go do it myself or I'm going to go work for, an established company. And I went to go work for a fairly small 1,000-person company called Great Plains. I'd come out of the Rochester finance and kind of energy sectors. And 6 months later, they were bought by Microsoft and spent 25 years at Microsoft across a variety of individual and leadership roles there. I think the last role I had was director for U.S. education. So spent a lot of time kind of on that path.
What does a director for U.S. education do?
Oh, that's like saying what a CEO of 6 Points Financial does. At the end of the day, we generally were in customer-facing roles. Oftentimes, they were very technical roles, either leading security and identity. There was always pedagogy, which is kind of the art of teaching because we always dealt with higher education institutions, and then healthcare. And so in various points during that time frame, I had implemented ERP systems, and in large healthcare institutions, I had assisted with valuations on healthcare providers that were consolidating, leading large social change discussions in education. We're faced with another one of those right now, which is AI. So a lot of changes in that environment. Took some risks. Went to go work for this little company out in Fargo, North Dakota. Turns out, I wound up going to work for the chief of staff for the current governor of North Dakota, right? So fast forward, you never know where these people are going to wind up. Yeah. So it's been a fascinating journey.
Interesting. So now we're at 25 years. So this is 5 years ago, based on your math of 30 years. So what did you start doing 5 years ago? So you left Microsoft.
Yeah, it's interesting. Always, I'd done a number of other things outside of work, ski instructing and, some other passion hobby kind of things, which were great. Never made any money. And I was sitting up in Lake Tahoe and we had just started, really heavy into the pandemic. And we were probably 4 or 5 months in and we got everybody up and running. So this is kind of March of that first year, not the first year where everybody St. Patrick's Day was like, hey, we need to go home. Yeah. About a year later, and I said, you know what? This is not doing it for me anymore. I'm done, right? I was getting ready to get my resignation letter and got a phone call from some of the folks at Adobe, on the leadership team, and said, hey, here's what we're trying to do. And they wanted me to come and start up a e-signature business focused on education and healthcare. And, we had big plans and we hired a bunch of people and the market quickly shifted yet again. But it was a great group of people. We had fun. It was like we were working in this, $50 billion or whatever the market cap is for Adobe today. I'd have to check. It's a lot more than that. But, like a startup inside of this large organization. So, 3 reorgs later, I run, half of the education business for Canada, mostly Canada and half the U.S. So it's been a fun opportunity.
Are you traveling a lot?
I travel about as much as I want to, which, is a fancy way of saying, yeah, I still travel. I try to keep it to about 5 or 6 nights a month. Some months it's more, some months it's less. But, we've gotten to that point as our kids have gotten older. Once in a while, we'll stay for a long weekend or we'll find a fun thing when we go there. So very rarely am I traveling somewhere where I'm not doing something else that I also want to do. Catching a baseball game, seeing a concert, doing something like that.
Which we can all see on all of your new social media stuff. So.
Yeah, you
can't avoid it.
It's pretty hard not to. We were in Austin for EduCause. I'm back up in Rochester this week. I'm back up in Rochester in 2 weeks, and then we're out in San Jose, and then Vegas, and then 3 weeks in Australia for some personal time. So it's we're traveling a fair amount.
So I have 2 things I have to ask you. First, Number one, was I the worst ski lesson that you've ever given?
So being fairly athletic, surprisingly so at times, David. Which I appreciate. You were division, all-state wrestler, some of those kind of things, and I know this. Your fear of not being in control was actually the most interesting part of our journey, trying to get you off the lift. And
I can't get off a ski lift still.
I know. It was amazing. But you were up and running in about 20 minutes when I was out there with you, and you could do a snow plow. It wasn't the worst I've ever had, but it was really hard because you used to work out a lot more, trying to get you to turn so you could actually use the separation between your upper and lower body, being that you're so muscular.
Thanks, David. This is great. My real question here is, folks, we have Steve in the background laughing. Hey, can you look up the market cap of Adobe real quick?
But I should know this off the top of my head.
Well, we're going to look it up. the real question I had was, you are seriously, and I don't know how you pull this off, and I hope you can add some value to the listener with this, one of the most efficient people that I know, because when I asked if you travel a lot, I've known you for a while, and it seems like you're always doing something. You're always gone. It seems to me, and I don't want to take this from you, but like you're done by like 9 a.m. on most days.
Oh,
whatever you're doing, I don't know.
I wish.
What does a day look like for you, and how are you so efficient?
Boy, that was a big sigh. It didn't start here, right? It's been a long journey to get to the place where I try to compartmentalize various facets of my day, right? And there's things that we just don't control. I don't worry about the politics in the same way that I used to. So my typical day used to be, and part of this is being younger with younger kids and all the other stuff, you're worrying about everything. If you worry about everything, nothing gets done, right? And you need to take things in bite-sized pieces. And I really started trying to be strategic with other people's time first and then my own. So working in tech, there's always another meeting. There's always another Zoom call. There's always a Teams call, whatever you were using. And to me, I would always get up early. Part of that was just being in the military. We could talk quite a bit on just the military stuff, but get up early. All of my focus time is in the morning. So from early, 4:30, 5 a.m., I'm spending probably a solid 2 hours heads down doing what I need to do to be productive for that week, for that day. Usually it's the big items, right? Yep. And so I get those out of the way. I use some of the tools. So I'm sending out things throughout the course of the day so people don't come into 30 things that they feel like their manager or their boss or a customer has to contend with.
You're scheduling emails then?
I'm scheduling emails. Okay. Oh, absolutely. I write emails all weekend, every weekend. Yep. As they come in, and I'm thinking about stuff, I write notes. So that morning focus time, I'll schedule those to go out from about 8 a.m. till about 11 a.m. because I'm dealing with 3 or 4 or 5 time zones. Yep. I then take that time after about 9 o'clock, and kids have gone off to school. A little different now, where somewhere between 7 and 11, I'm exercising for at least an hour or two. Yeah. It may be a run, it may be a bike ride. It's usually there's a social component to it. So, much like we used to play paddle or do some other stuff together. So there's some business operations there. And then usually around 10 or 11, that's when I'm starting my main collaboration part of the day between 10 and 2. Yeah. And that's really when most of the teamwork stuff gets done. And then at the end of the day, I'm, reading, I'm learning, I'm listening. I'm trying to find something else that I didn't know, trying to, get down a couple more sentences in whatever paragraph I'm working on for the book, right? And so for me, it's about focus, starting early. And then really in the evenings, I'm not doing a whole lot of work these days. I just, I'll respond to people on the West Coast here and there. But for me, it's focus with intention and then leave enough time for creativity and some social interaction. I think it's really important.
How do you go to Australia for 3 weeks and still do your job?
Great question. So, we're fairly fortunate working in the tech industry. We have the tools to, I'm not tied to working at a stamping mill, right? And so that's a blessing and a curse. The curse is if you don't get away from it, there's always something else to do. So I purposely have some rules where I turn off notifications on things like Teams and Outlook. So I'm not constantly looking at them. I do look at them before I go to bed, and I'll job it off a quick note or put a thumbs up. So while I'm in Australia, we are, I looked about a year out, and my son's in a new school down in the Hilton Head area, and they had 2.5 weeks off. And I said, you know what, we're going to figure out how to make this work. So Adobe shuts down for a week twice a year, once during the July 4th week and then another time during the Christmas week. So we'll be shut down for a week. I'm leaving a few days early, and then I'm going to stay for another two weeks or so. And I'll get on some work. But most of that, I'll be tuned out for a solid 2 weeks.
Do you notify your team? Do they all know you're gone?
This time they do. There's been other times not so much, and nobody, with 5 or 6 hours time difference, if you're willing to get up or stay up late, you can get a lot done. I was in Portugal for about 10 days in February with the family and some family friends. And you know what? It was great because most evenings, right, the day was, I was up early, so I got to cover all the East Coast time. And I think Thursday, finally, I showed some people where I was at, and I'm like, I didn't even know you were gone. You were on all the meetings. And I'm like, And also it's managing effectively. If I'm on a meeting and I'm not the presenter or I'm on a CC line, I have a rule set up that it's going in another file. I'll look at that file once a day, right, in Outlook or in Teams. I don't have all the notifications other than from my boss and my direct team members.
Yeah, it seems like always like you've accomplished a lot. Obviously, it seems like you're not working on it. But what about the people that say I'm not a morning person? Like you said, it goes back to the military.
Yeah. The morning time is just, for me, it's that time when I get energized. It's that time I can wake up. Yep. I love the sun coming up, right? I'll go for a 4-mile walk. My wife thinks I'm nuts at 5:10, 5:15 when the light's out there. I got a few strange looks and a stop from our security within the place where we live, because I had a helmet on one day with a light, bike helmet, right? I didn't want to get hit. Yeah. And my darling bride was saying, you better not be out there in the dark. So, I had some of those lights that you clip on a stupid bike.
Yeah.
It was great. So I now walk a little bit later when it's light out, or run or whatever we're doing. But, for it's not about really when you're doing it in the morning or the evening. Find what works for you. For some people, it's the middle of the day, right? But have that dedicated time where you can focus on some things that add value to your life as well as your employers where you can, right? And I think there's a lot of opportunities now to spend some time in learning something new, right? So I just mentioned AI, right? That's where I've spent a lot of time playing with our tools, other people's tools. Am I going to use them daily in my job? Yeah, probably. Do I need to? No, there's people that do a lot of it. But, it's so much fun to experiment and try new things.
I have a bunch of AI questions that we'll get to, but I am definitely the morning person like you are. And I worry that I drive people crazy in our office, because you're totally right. They probably, when they first check their phone, see 24 messages from me. So I'm going to take the scheduling from you. So
do you know how to do it?
I'll figure it out.
Okay. It's up on the toolbar there, and then go. Anyways, you can delay it. You can actually set up a rule as well. So it'll just go out 3 hours from the time you sent it if it's in between certain hours. Let me know if Steve, you can probably help him with this. Steve's off camera, but he'll probably be able to help us with this.
I personally enjoy the 2:30 a.m. and 3 a.m.
Yeah, I am. I'm up. I've been up really early recently. I don't know why. 2:30, 3 in the morning.
You're excited.
I'm ready to go.
Do you take a nap?
No. Okay. This would be a normal nap time. I'm extremely excited right now.
So am I.
So let's go back to the military.
Yeah.
You went to a small school.
I did.
You then went right to the military?
It's funny. So my father at the time, we were living in a small town outside of Ithaca, New York, and there was 150 people maybe in my graduating class, not dissimilar to Pal Mac, although we had more people than cows, but not by much. So Dryden, New York, shout out to Dryden. I think we have a big anniversary coming up for our high school reunion this year. But I went to the local community college, and, my grades were fine. I wouldn't say I was valedictorian, but, honors classes, and had lots of opportunities. And my father was a PhD in physics and was working at Cornell at the Theory Center. I'm like, I don't want to go to Cornell, and there was some other family stuff that was going on. I'm like, I'm just tired of being in this small town, had done some traveling. I need a change. I'm tired of talking to the same people about the same things. You can only, most of these people I had known for 10, 14 years, your entire life at that point. And wound up going in the military. Took the ASVAB test. Apparently did pretty well. I wasn't as dumb as I looked. But, it worked out pretty well, and met a great group of people, and, had some opportunities to learn some really technical things while I was in the military, and then spent, about a year and a half or so as active, and then spent another 6.5 years in the reserves. And during that time, there were some times of war, 92 through 94 in Saudi Arabia. We were activated, and then we didn't deploy. But, there were a lot of interesting things that I got out of that time. And some of it is, I think one of the key learnings for me was there's some jobs that were just tedious. It's hard to describe how tedious they were, but you had to get them done. And it's hurry up and wait. You've heard that in the military, and there was a lot of that. And so sometimes you had a job. We can make up one, pulling communication and encryption equipment out of vehicles that had come back from the field, right? And we had a squad that did it. And, hey, it's going to be muddy. It's going to be dirty. Go out and do it. And if you had 8 hours to do it and you got it done in 3 hours, well, then you had another 4 hours to go do something else, right? And so we would optimize some of those things. Being in the military, it wasn't always the quickest to get it done was the right thing to do, right? And so kind of staggering your work, people could focus on other things, learning for the next, course that they had to take, because you're always taking classes in the military as well. So again, I think it was kind of that optimization.
Yeah. Interesting. So so small school to the military to the next steps we've already gone through.
Yeah.
Can I ask you some money questions?
I would be disappointed if you didn't ask me some money questions, but I will reserve the right to say no to any of them.
You can definitely say no.
Okay. No.
I'm not going to ask you numbers.
All right.
No numbers.
Yeah.
What is small town? You said your father has a PhD in physics. I didn't know that. And was at Cornell.
Yeah.
What's your first memory of money as a kid?
As a kid or as like a young adult?
Ever.
I was definitely money motivated. So I had mowing lawns. Actually, I remember in fourth grade, there was a gentleman named, I'm trying to think of his last name. It escaped me. First name was Don. And there was this development being put up. When I say development, it was like 20 houses, right, in a farming community, bedroom community for Ithaca. And we would go around and they still had real aluminum siding then. Can you believe that? And we would collect all the aluminum siding. And then we'd stockpile it in their barn. And then we'd go put it in the back of the pickup truck and have the parents go take us to this recycling place that would give us 10 cents, 20 cents a pound, whatever it is. But we'd walk away with like $20. And so we got to be friends with the construction people who would go from different places to different places, and we'd go and pick up the scrap aluminum.
Okay, so that's like third, fourth grade, like you said. What made you want to get that money? Like, were you missing something? Did you want new sneakers? What was it?
It was probably like Doritos and a Coke or something,
You just wanted money.
I was motivated. It was like tangible. So we picked peas and beans. Yeah. I was just telling somebody this story the other day, like 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you weren't old enough to really have a job. And so we would ride our bikes down to one of the local farms that had a farm stand, and you'd get a bushel basket, go pick peas and beans, and you're picking with people that are doing this for a living, and you watch how fast they're doing it. You're just trying to do it so after 4 hours in the hot summer sun, amongst the strawberries or the peas or blackberries or whatever we were picking, and then we'd take it down, we'd get immediate cash back. It was great, right? And so you could go out and buy things and do things, and nobody could say that you couldn't spend your money on something.
So that is carried through your whole life to this point.
Very much so.
I know that.
In some strange ways at times.
Yeah, and it works out for the folks that are putting in the work, right? So what do you think of when you see, you have 3 kids?
3 children.
And I'm not talking about your 3 children, but maybe friends of theirs or something. When you see kids that talk about, hey, I don't have any money, I'm broke, but then you see them not doing the stuff that you did. What do you say to those folks?
This rolls right over into adulthood as well, but we can start with children, right? I can even use my 3, and they're all motivated. They're all different. They're all motivated. You try to appreciate them in the way that they are. They're not all type A's, and I'm definitely more of a type A, as I think you may be as well, Mr. Pulcini. But, oftentimes people are afraid to ask themselves the hard questions, right? Am I happy doing what I'm doing? Sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You need to provide for a family, you have a kid on the way, your parents can't afford college. There's lots of ways to get there. And I was pretty succinct in that I didn't want to owe anybody any money. Like, I knew that from an early age. And so I think I took out 10 grand in student loans and used the GI Bill, even though my father eventually started sending me money. So I just didn't want to be beholden. So it was a control thing for me. So people that say, hey, there's not an opportunity, you haven't looked hard enough, or you haven't tried in many cases. And bad things happen to good people. But there's so many opportunities out there to start a side hustle, to take what you're doing and doing something tangential to that. In fact, I was just talking with a few people today at lunch about, hey, here's some other things that you can do that doesn't necessarily cost you a lot of money. It may cost you some time, but there's definitely lots of different ways. And it's not always about what you get paid, right? It's about how you may impact others in a positive way, how you may impact or improve somebody that you interact with, whether that be a customer, a friend, or a peer.
I have so many questions I could ask you right now. We're gonna take all day. So the kid, your 3 children.
Yes.
If I asked you, I would ask you what your relationship with money is. Like, what does it mean to you? Mm-hmm. But you kind of just answered that. What would you want your kids to say? And I know they're different.
They are all different.
But if I handed them all a lot of money, what would you want them to say about it? Or if they had none, what would you tell them to do?
Those are too long questions and answers. So I hope that they have a healthy relationship for money, and that they live within the means that they want to have, right? To be able to have the experiences that they like. So at a certain point, right, having another car, having a bigger house, and again, people that say that live in the 10,000 square foot house, money doesn't matter. BS. It matters, right? It can make things easier for you, but it can also make things harder because you're worried about where's the next thing going to come from. I think putting yourself in a place that you have the freedom to be able to have the experiences with the people that you want to are probably the most important things I think that money can provide for you.
I love it. Would you, and this is for your kids when they listen to this. Mm-hmm. I already know the answer because I think of it for my own kids too. And I was also very money motivated, especially when you're 25 years old and I want 12 houses on the lake and Ferraris. Yeah, whatever. I don't care if my kids are motivated by that, but I want them to have enough to do what they want to do with who they want to do it with, right? So would you ever be disappointed if your children turned out to not have any money or be able to generate it for themselves?
That's a great question. Would I be disappointed? I don't think disappointed is the right word, right? But I also think that when you've had whatever modicum of success we all believe that we've had, I think childhood and young adulthood has gotten extended quite a bit. And so we're all okay with maybe having a 26-year-old living at home or that 28-year-old that hasn't quite launched yet. As a person in their 50s, wow, that's really hard for me to get my head around. Yeah. So we've certainly provided extenuating support for our kids. You know, we have one child that's a preschool teacher, loves the job, loves it. Yeah. Comes home with stories every day. Guess what? Not very well rewarded, but has a lot of fun. And so we just had a conversation this week where there's some things that she wanted to do. And I'm like, you know, we've helped you out in plenty of ways. You might want to think about getting a second job, whatever that may be. And finally, after multiple months of talking about it, finally went on an interview and got a second job. And it's not a huge thing, but, you know, just seeing some success, it's okay. Now I can say, okay, I'm making this much money more, which again, you know, when you're making, you know, a certain amount, just keeping the lights on for a lot of families is tough. And I don't want to underestimate the amount of effort it takes for people to get through their day and jobs that they may or may not like. And, you know, there's healthcare issues, all these other things that come in. But for my own kids, listen, I'd love them to be happy and self-sufficient at whatever level that might be.
So another thing I see with kids of parents who have done well for themselves, like you didn't get lucky.
No.
You did start at Microsoft 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That is a huge help. What do you say if your kids are like, yeah, Dad, but you got lucky. You started at a tech company 30 years ago. That worked out for you.
The stock was $18 a share. Well, here's the part that, you know, I don't advertise greatly. Did I make money, you know, from the buyout and some of the other stuff? Yeah, it's not, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars or anything like that. But, you know, those first 10 years I was there, if you go back and look at the stock price of that particular company, it stayed within $17 to $21. So I made money for sure. But with the advent of from 2013, 2014 through 2022, with the uptick in Mr. Nadella's, who's now CEO, the stock went from, you know, $20 a share to $400 and something. Had a profound impact on what I was doing, how I was doing. It gave me the latitude to be way more choosy about what I was doing as well. But I had peers that had taken all the, you know, stock that they have gotten and they liquidated it to go pay for this and go pay for that, despite sometimes what some of our financial advice may have said. And, you know, that was a risk. And you know what? That risk turned out really well for me. So it's been very fortunate.
Yeah. Okay. So in 2012, 14, you said 12?
In that time frame, yeah.
So it took that long for then a profound impact to happen 12 years ago. So you're in your mid 40s. So I'm talking to the people that are 30 right now that think they need to make $2 million a year right now.
Generally won't happen.
And how fast does that time go?
It went in a blink. And the things you think are important. And, you know, I had people that were my mentors tell me these things. Oh, you know, the days go by quick, but the years go by slow. Well, very quickly, all of a sudden, the years go by quickly and the days go by slow and you get filled up with all this other stuff, right? And so, you know, if you're talking about creating wealth, right, which is the business that you're in, time's still your best advocate, right? You know, for years and years, put money into maxed out 401ks, maxed out your Roth. There was this other income stream. Now that, you know, I had the fortunate, and some of it's luck, right? Some of it's just right place, right time. But I think everybody has those opportunities. Most folks don't even save their maximum that they can in a 401k starting in your 20s. Time is on your benefit for sure.
No doubt about it. I have folks that were relatively low income, low quote net worth until they were 60, and now they're multimillionaires at 72, 75.
And they can't spend what they have, and they're creating a legacy for their children, right?
Well, this is
good or bad.
Who do you specialize in working with, right? It's one of those over 50, you've oversaved for retirement at this point, and you have a tax issue. Those folks need a lot of help.
You do, but that's why they engage professionals such as yourself, right? To help with not only the planning, but the mitigation on the what if, right?
Yeah. It's tough to put a value on that. But let's go back to, you talked about impact at the beginning. I want to talk about your book, though.
Yes.
Maybe the impact, you can tie it into this. What can we expect in this book? And then I have one more question for you, and then we'll wrap this up.
So what you can expect is a fairly rollicking adventure in the tech industry with, some really just real grounded advice, right? And some of these are anecdotes from folks that I've interacted with over the years. Some of these are hard lessons learned between work-life balance, understanding who you're doing business with, really understanding what is the importance of relationships, what are the importance of networks, knowing when to say no, right? One of the best lessons for me was, you know what? I don't need to say yes to everything. And everybody's, what's the power of yes? Well, the power of no is, what are your priorities? How do they dovetail with people in your network and the people that you interact with, whether it be at home or business? And so I think that's probably one of those key learnings for me. And I think there'll be some value for others.
Yeah. Speaking of saying no, I did want to ask you this. What is something looking back on that you are so happy that you said no to?
There were one or two jobs over the years. I still remember one. I was working at Microsoft at the time, and there was somebody who's a very, very nice person, learned a lot from her, had gone over to another country outside of the U.S., and very bright, very driven, very top down. Probably our work styles weren't exactly alike. We managed to get a lot of good stuff done. And I got a phone call out of the blue. Hey, I need you to help me be my country manager in, Latin American country. And I'm like, it was challenging enough working for that person when I worked for them. And I learned some lessons, but I said no. And it was probably a fairly good opportunity, but I would have been trapped, right? I would have been stuck working in a sub for the broader Microsoft corporate, it's like a standalone in-country company. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because shortly after, that person then moved on outside of the role that they were in, and somebody above them didn't get the job that they thought they were going to get, which created a trickle-down effect. And I would have been stuck in the cold. And more like, and when I say in the cold, like being an expat in another country with a 3-year contract, and now the person that hired you is no longer there, right?
Did you have kids then?
We had an infant who was, a 4-year-old and like a 3-month-old at the time. Yeah. I don't know if I ever shared that story with you.
No.
So there's been a couple of those things that sometimes things just work out for the right reasons. And there'll be this story that'll come up around, what are the 3 most important things, and a discussion that came up. And you may have heard this. I'm not going to get into it too much on the podcast because it's in the book, but, faith, family, and work, and whatever priority. And so I was sitting down with a senior manager who wanted me to continue to be involved in this particular work project, and it wasn't functional, right? There were so many reasons why it wasn't working. And they tried to get me to say that work should be more important than faith and family. And, now is one of those times, Dave, I really need you to step up. Well, I had traveled 180 nights that year, seriously, 180 nights, missed daughters walking, a birthday in there. And it's like, this just isn't worth it. And my wife and I decided that, we drew some lines around some of that. And that's another one of those where I said, no, you know what? Your work is not more important than, family and faith and, some other things that we had going on. It wasn't. And I stepped away, and you know what? The person wound up getting let go about 5 months later for some other silly things that they were doing. I'll just leave it at that.
Interesting. Yeah. You must, I can't wait to read these stories. Okay, let's get to AI, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yes,
right
sir.
Now. The AI right now, give me 2 things you're using it for. And then I'm going to ask you, is AI going to take over the world? Have at it.
Perfect. So Number one, two things I'm using AI for. I was with some leadership in New York City for school district, and the million students plus or minus 70,000 employees. It's a big job. It's as big as any Fortune 500 company. And we were looking at it. Hey, how can we use AI? We talked about the student use cases, and the perfect example was, hey, we have HR policy. Every time that we have either a good thing or a bad thing happen with a teacher, there's unions, and then we have to shuttle stuff off to lawyers. And by the time an administrator can actually have access to, okay, how should we promote this person, or how should we discipline this person because they've missed 4 days and they need to take a leave of absence? We have to write off to the lawyers. They get back to us 8 weeks later. We were able to take the entire HR policy manual, put it into, in this case, it was Adobe Acrobat AI. Mm-hmm. And we were able to query some examples. So, hey, I've missed 4 days of in-room teaching. What is the disciplinary action that should take place? And it pulled it up. Hey, please write an email that I can send off to the union representative. And it took all of about 2 minutes. So now instead of sending this stuff off to the lawyers and getting something similar back, they never tell you exactly what they do, but here's what we advise because they're risk managers. They now can have something happen that's timely. The administrator can take care of the positive or negative thing, as the case may be, and still get on with their day instead of having to suspend it. In this case, it was, suspend somebody, or let's say we're trying to get somebody promoted because you've been such an amazing teacher, and we have to look up how many months in grade, what do we need to do, what are the policies for intern promotion, and it was phenomenal. So it saved them hours and hours and hours, and it was immediacy. That's one. Yep. Number two is just some of the social media stuff that we've been doing, right? And so had the opportunity to work with some great groups at a marketing organization and Steve and some other folks, and things that normally would take a lot of time. We've gotten pretty good at taking the gibberish that comes out of my mouth, recording it along with the video, and really boiling it down and distilling some really clear and concise thoughts and helping us refine where it is that we're going on that journey, which was kind of writing the book. So it's been really fun. So for me, I use AI every single day.
So if I have an attorney on tomorrow,
yes,
should I ask him if AI is going to end his business?
It will not end his business. But what it may do is allow him to be more efficient at going out and doing other things like, the first job most lawyers have to do, business development and networking, right? So they have more time to go do those kind of things. It's not just hitting golf balls every Wednesday, right? Like some people we may know do. But it's really about taking the less value-added tasks where you might have had a paralegal or even an associate do those things. Those are still valuable resources. Mm-hmm. So why if you're doing mortgage closings, right? And you got to, you packet and title and all this other stuff. All the stuff that has to get sent out, it can get summarized pretty easily now using AI. So you can have that associate go out and start helping farm business, right? And so, again, I think it's so valuable, even just in client follow-up, right? If you own a financial services firm, you used to have to type up a letter and, send an email. And some people, I'm sure you have folks that are as old as me that don't really like email. I'm kidding. But you probably have customers that don't really want to deal with email, right? They want something hard copy or let's meet over breakfast. Well, you can't scale meeting over breakfast. There's 365 days in a year, and you have other things that you need to do. Now, in the beginning, you probably did a lot of that, right?
Probably 2 or 3 breakfasts a day. So there's 900 breakfasts.
And that's how you get, strong.
That's right.
But really, I think AI is a tool. People are using it one way or the other. Mm-hmm. We spend lots of time talking about the ethical AI. It's really about how are we going to construct those guardrails? Mm-hmm. How are we going to make sure that we're handling things like, FERPA and HIPAA? So, basically data integrity, what's yours is private. It's not being shared with other parties. We're not monetizing that. And so this is still an evolving area. There's a lot of gray space out there, huge inflows, billions and billions and billions of dollars. I think Microsoft's outlay for last quarter was $30 billion in capital infrastructure. Yeah. $30 billion. And they expect that's going to increase. So is it going to replace people? Yeah, in some industries it may replace certain tasks, but I think it's going to allow people to, get better at what they do, and where the value add is no different than when word processing first came out, or the calculator.
I fully believe it. I use AI all the time. I use it more than the old Google. right?
Yes.
We have GPTs developed for us. We have different bots. We have follow-up email GPTs. We have there's AI tools now that we should do a separate podcast just on the top 10 AI use cases, but like email draft responses, right?
How awesome is that?
You get 50 emails a day, and that's on the very, very, very low end. If it could just put a draft in your draft box and you could just hit send if it looks good or edit it quickly, tons of time saved, right?
It's amazing. Did you know that on your cell phone, right? When you get a text from me or Dave or Steve, you may get a text and it prompts you, right? Hey, do you want to respond with this?
Yeah.
You're using AI already, my friend,
yes,
right? That's predictive analytics.
Yeah.
These large language models and these individualized chat GPTs or Gemini or, there's a million other tools that are out there. But there's 5 or 6 or 7 big tools that everybody's building on.
Yeah.
I think it'll probably come down to a few less than that, but we could spend an entire half hour talking about AI. So it's fascinating.
I was just thinking about a guy like you working out in the morning, and we'll wrap this up, taking a picture of the breakfast menu saying, I need 80 grams of protein. What should I order? It will tell you what to order.
This is true. It depends on how big I want to get my neck.
That's right. Hey, Steve, before we wrap this up, what's the market cap of Adobe?
$212.5 billion.
212.5.
Yes.
Don't forget the 0.5 billion.
Don't forget about the 0.5.
And it'll be outdated by the time this comes out.
Use generative AI. Adobe Firefly is wonderful. We mentioned some other tools that are out here. It'll change what you do. It really will. And
you just got to mess with it. Just mess with it.
Play with it.
Yeah.
You're right. Like most things in life, if you just use it, you're going to have more fun during that discovery process than any course that you'll ever take. It's not difficult.
Yeah. Or you can ask the AI to teach you what it should teach you. Hey, ChatGPT, what should I be asking you about my business? So start there.
So if I was to stop, Dave, and just take a pause and be real here for a moment, what's the one thing that it's changed in your business environment?
Content production to start. For example, if we're working with folks over 50 years old that have oversaved for retirement, because I said this before, that might face a future tax issue.
Yeah.
Write me 10 hooks for YouTube videos that are 3 to 5 minutes that will get the most clicks and go viral.
Phenomenal.
And then write me a script for 200 words in my tone, in my voice, because we've uploaded YouTube scripts and everything else.
And then you can publish it using Adobe Express. And you have your web content, Snapchat, TikTok.
There's the plug, folks. David Pearlman, thank you so much for doing this, man. You got to get out of here. This is 42 minutes in.
I know.
Thank you. Make it a great day, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Dear Rochester Retire Well podcast. If you would like to hear more about financial planning services offered by 6 Point Financial Partners, please call us at 585-485-6048 or email us at dpulcini@6pointfp.com. Make it a great day. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. Information here is provided in part by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither 6 Point Financial Partners, Private Client Services, nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of 6 Point Financial Partners. They do not necessarily represent those of Private Client Services, RFG Advisory, their employees, or their clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by 6 Point Financial Partners or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG. A registered investment advisor. Private Client Services, 6 Point Financial Partners, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.